Perfect.
Um,
I've sent you some notes about the hands. I don't know if
mhm,
you prepared something or yeah. But I also watched your seminar video about turn plays, like in blind sports, but there were
mhm.
a lot of general concepts as well. So maybe my notes were different by now, like after
Okay,
seeing the
so
video.
I'm glad actually that's good because like I noted down some stuff or like I have a bunch of notes for yourself as well.
Hmm.
Like I wrote it based on like the notes that you sent me. I noted some stuff that you might be struggling a little bit or maybe not necessarily struggling, but more about like you are being uncertain
Hmm.
in some spots. So we want to like brush on some uh, turn concepts, I would say. Before we talk about the river, obviously, we're going to be talking about rivers today as well, but it's important to understand the turn play or have like a very solid strategy on the turn because then you want to have like correct river arriving range, right? Um, but yeah, so I have your notes and my notes on slides. I have mm, some notes on here. So I wanted to like split this into actually three parts. So part two is gonna be just about like general concepts about river play. And my main focus is on like differences for in position, out of position player on the river. And then we're gonna go through hopefully 6 hands that you sent me with some notes. We're gonna discuss that. But let me start with this question. So if you think about playing rivers, the in position strategy is strategically different to out of position strategy. Like, what are the first things that come to your mind when I say that the strategy is going to be different? What are the differences, if you can spot any?
Yes, so the out of position player has one more like game tree to consider, like the check calling or check raising game tree. And if you are in position, you have like profitable check backs with all your middling cards.
Mm-hmm.
Consider the hand strength. So yeah, out of position can't like check everything in the middle and bet his best and worst hands. So that in position does. So out of position is in general more linear and in position more polarized. Yeah.
Right, and that also like leads to let's go back to the check, right? So there is additional branch of the tree that you need to be evaluating when you're out of position, like you said. It's not about like check call or check raise line. It's more about just like check and face the bet
Hmm.
node.
Hmm.
So this is definitely something that makes this spot different, and it makes the EV of check different too, right? The EV of checking hands is gonna be different for out of position and in position. In position, as you said, can check back and see the showdown always. Out of position doesn't have that luxury because of this additional node that he needs to be considering, which is gonna be check and face the bet. That decreases the EV of check for some like in a way. So that fact alone and everything that you just said also is true and good to hear that you are aware of that. That leads to do some changes in terms of the bet sizing choices that both players
Hmm.
have. You mentioned that one player out of position in the spot is more linear, and then like in position player will play more polarized, right? So if you think about the volume of chips going into the middle of a table, which player is putting more volume?
Yeah, so clearly the imposition player. So he's polarized, like he size is big. It would make no sense, like betting third pot or so, blocking in position.
Yes, exactly. So blocking out the position is going to be out and doesn't make any sense, right? For in position
Hmm.
player because of the EV of check being correct rather high. Um, but out of position will have that sizing available because he can play a block bet note and then face to raise. So that means that like out of position will bet smaller on average with the same hand classes even, right? So just want to go here first before I go here. So if you took, I've just like I took like a very random board example, and left one is early position versus big blind, right one is early position versus button, both for the big blinds in the same texture. So king 3 and same note as well. King 10-3 two-tone, bet small call, bet 83 call, 4 of hearts river, and this is the river strategy for both players. So this is the global, like this is the hand matrix, this is the strategy for early position, which is out of position in this case, right? Sorry, in position against the big blind. So the left one is in position, the right is out of position. And you see this idea showing up here in this chart, right? The volume of chips going in is smaller when we are out of position. So out of position player is, if you look here, splitting his range into all in for like 81% pot and blocking pretty much similar amount of the time. And checking way less. And then in position is not really interesting in putting like a medium sizing. Small sizing is basically it's gone, like you said. Block bet in position doesn't really accomplish anything. There's some medium sizings that I would ignore myself. I wouldn't play that. I think overcomplicating things is actually something that I noticed you might be doing a little. I want to address that. And then like you would just basically play here, check or shove.
Okay.
Whereas out of position is blocking or.
And so the frequencies are also different. Like out of position, we bet more than in position because of the bet sizing, I imagine.
Yes, pretty much. Like you can still block bet with top pairs, as you see here. Whereas like some of the top pairs on this flush completing river are not hands that in position wants to bet because there's plus like check is plus EV. So he can always check in showdown, and out of position, like I said, doesn't really have that luxury, right? Of course, like both players have slightly different river arriving ranges, like out of position C bets flop it differently, right? Like out of position bets barrels turn differently, but I wanted to show you the idea of like the breakdown of the bet sizing choices.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so this is what I noticed that you might have some issues with that I want to address today. So river arriving range might be a problem because, and that's going to be caused by the turn strategies, right? So if you think about, playing correctly on river, you need to be making sure that you play correctly turn flop and pre-flop. Because if you make a mistake early in a tree, like the mistakes can very easily multiply. It can cost you more, right? Like the let's say you arrive to the river with the hand that shouldn't be there, and then you do a certain action with it, like maybe value bet too thinly or like bluff a combo that shouldn't arrive there. So many things you can do wrong, like earlier in the tree that will cause some problems on the river, and costs like the cost of that on the river is pretty high because of the like you build the pot on the turn, like flop turn, you build the pot, and like you're gonna be putting more chips on the river, and if your decision is like minus EV1, you're gonna be losing quite a bit of big blinds per 100. So what I want to stress out here is the importance of being very well studied in terms of like how to play flop and turn. So then the river is gonna be easier to play. Okay. That's why you should be focusing a lot on flop and turn study. Like these days, people are getting better, but they are getting better in terms of playing sort of early in a tree. That makes sense. Like they get better pre-flop, they got better on flops. So the amount of mistakes that they will be doing on earlier streets aren't as high as they were, like say a year ago or something. But there's still a lot of room that you can exploit or play better on, like deeper in the game tree, like turns and rivers. It makes sense if you think about it. Even if someone is studying, like it's just the amount of time spent, like it's gonna be more, most of that time is gonna be spent on pre-flop and then flop strategies, right? Like we're gonna see turns, like say half the time, and then out of that you're gonna see the river half the time. So people are just not arriving to the river as often. So that's why like there's less time spent, like study time on rivers. But that's very important streets to understand, I would say. So is the turn. But you need to make sure that your turn is it's like baby steps, you know. Make sure that the flop is somewhere close to optimal. Then the turn, you have a decent range construction, good understanding of the bet sizing choices, etc., etc. So then you're gonna be arriving to the river, correct river arriving range, which from like what I've seen, there was a hand that like you shouldn't have on the river, like one hand. That definitely creates some issues there. So I wanted to talk about it today. I've sent it uncertainty about turn sizings. It feels like you are not. Feels like you want to split your range on a turn quite a bit. Even on bricks. But at the same time, it feels like you know the answer based on the notes that you sent me. You know the answer, but for some reason you double guess yourself. There's a lot of like what ifs and maybes in there. You should trust yourself a little bit more. I think like based on what you sent me, like I think you have a decent understanding of like how the spot works, but for some reason you're just like adding layers and layers and layers into the equation and make things very, very complicated. A lot of people say, let's say, I mean, not a lot, but some people say, oh, exploitatively, I want to, let's take the example that on the turn brick in position, you want to be playing 2E or check, right? 2E, for the ones that don't know, it's like geometric sizing that is the size designed to bet the same amount of the pot on the turn and the river, or like any street really. So 2E means 2 over 2 streets, 3E would be 3 streets. So, and there's a certain formula that you can use to calculate what this percentage of the pot is going to be. So, and let's say you have a brick on a turn, you identified that we're going to be playing 2E sizing, but then you want to now also on top of that, you want to be building like a smaller sizing. I don't know if you noticed that, like you want to split in spots, right? But you are, so you're all overcomplicating things, right? That's one. You are adding additional bet sizing to your range. The problem that I see, a big one, is the last point here that I have. The way you want it to split is basically you are betting specific holdings, and you want to bet them as much, like as big as they're worth. Say on like King 10-8, you want to bet Jack's half pot, and the rest is gonna go 2E or check.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So now if you think about it, you complicated the turn situation for yourself because you now added the one sizings, right? One sizing that solver doesn't like. Right? But you're doing this with the very specific hands. So now, do you really want to, like in practice, especially in game, like I play, like I don't know how many tables I play, but let's say it's like 8 or 10 or whatever it is, then you're just adding another thing to consider, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is capable of doing that while playing 8 tables. It's just too much.
Yeah.
You know why? Like sort of like the idea of like not fixing stuff that works, right? So why would we fix something that is already designed very well, and like the answer is 2E or check, and then you don't, you don't necessarily want to be fixing that and changing that into block 2E and check. That's too complex.
Okay.
Second point is turn sizing, but again, this is the same. So when to split down bet from 2e, down betting. There's also like upsize from 2e, sometimes occurring. So oftentimes on equity shifting turns that favor your opponent massively, you want to bet smaller than 2e. So you can think about it very simply. C-bet flop call, turn is a brick. What your value range wants to do? Well, your value range wants to be all in by the river, right?
Yeah.
How do we accomplish that? We go geometric. Do we have another sizing there? No, why would we? Because why would we have like a smaller sizing than that when we, like, all the hands that might like smaller sizing based on their strength, you can check back.
Okay, and does it fit for every stack size? Like if I have like 50 big blinds, do I go to E or check on the turn when the turn is a brick?
On most, let's call them tournament stack sizes, yes. So like 30, 40, 50, like you're gonna see splits at like 100 blinds or so, 80 blinds perhaps. There will be hands that are, let's say, straights will go 2e on a turn, and two pair, like top 2 pair will go 2e on a turn, but you still want to be able to bet top pair hands, but top pair hands are just not worth 2e. They need to either like go 2e or check river, or they need to bet like medium. So then you're gonna see the split, but this split doesn't occur as frequently when you get shallower, when you play like a tournament stack size.
Okay.
So when to downbet from 2e is when, so on a brick, 2e is gonna be usually good answer, right? On like tournament depths. When we want to downbet from it would be when a turn is the equity shifting card and favors the opponent hugely. So any ideas like what those turns could be?
The main turn is the flush completer. Like big blind has a lot of flushes, depending all suited hands, and yeah, so on flush completing turns we surely downsize. And maybe like if we go big on the flop, then if the second card pairs, it's a bad card. We downsize, and yeah, maybe in some straight completing turns, but not so much, I guess.
Yeah. Straight completing turns that you don't have the coverage of. So let's say there's a straight completing turn that big blind has offsuited combinations of, and you never have them.
Okay.
Then it's gonna be like you want to be putting lower volume of chips on those streets then. So yeah, that's exactly that. The flash completers are quite tricky because it's not that like you don't have flashes yourself. And if you think about the flashes, you actually have the nutted ones, right? You're gonna have ace king suited, which is gonna be the nut flush on board that isn't paired. Your opponents never have that hand. So it's still like you do have nut advantage. And given that your range is tighter, you still like flashes make okay, like significant percentage of your range still. Yeah, he has like more in terms of combos, but in terms of percentage of range, it's not necessarily that clear. But the flash completers are just turns that are very dynamic. So in some on very dynamic turns also, you want to be down betting from 2e as well. If there's like a lot of draws possible, if there's a straight there, but both of you have, but like you have interest in like still betting top pairs, then you're gonna be betting smaller than Geo sometimes. And when the turn didn't necessarily complete a lot of draws, but made like opened a lot of possible draws. So say his backdoor equity hands are now flush draws, so that would be like double flush draw turn. Let's say his pairs from the flop are now like pairs plus gut shots or something like that. Then you're gonna see actually upsides from Geo quite a bit. But you can ignore that. But it happens. So betting larger than geometric is also showing up. Point number 3 here is the river sizing. So also you had this eager to split in spots when in position plays all in or check.
Okay.
So, again, complicating things. And again, you know the answer that it's not gonna be a play to bet medium there, right? You bet you go all in or check, and yet for some reason you want to bet medium. And again, you want to do that with specific hands. And that range is gonna be totally unbalanced as well, right? Because you're never bluffing that sizing. All your bluffs you go all in with. So try to avoid betting what your hand wants to do.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that I noticed. It's not about your hand, it's about what your range wants to do for the most part. Like, yeah, it's kind of like, let's say you can simplify poker into something that is on the flop, you want to do what your range wants to do, and on the turn you want to do what your hand wants to do. But that doesn't necessarily work. It's not as simple as it sounds. So I would avoid to thinking about the hand, like looking at pocket jacks, and then pocket jacks being like a second pair, but there was a check somewhere, and now we check again. So let's bet, right? But like let's try to bet what range wants to bet, because especially in position, because you can check and show them. So don't like start using like smaller sizing in position with very specific holdings because they want to bet but also like you open yourself up there, right? Like you are reopening the betting action. The opponent can shove on you.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do then, right? It sucks. All right, so let's start with some first hand actually. So first thing I want to address here is, so this is the situation. I can pull it up here. Think about why in 1923, 78, 15, why in this spot you think jamming with this hand class makes sense?
Because we realize our equity the most. So if we open raise, get a jam, we can't call. And you often see like on the button or cutoff hands like Jack 10 suited or 10-9 suited are open jamming because you don't want to face a jam and realize equity well.
So on what stack depth this hand is jamming on a button?
Like 14 or 15. So it's maybe a little bit too deep.
Yeah.
20 bigs.
Okay.
I see the hand on like 14 blinds or 15 blinds shoving.
14 blinds, 15 blinds, right? But we have 19.
Yeah.
And it's uneven distribution, so the presence of 15 big blinds on a big blind could make us jam some hands, right? Possibly. But what hands? So we have 10-9 that we want to shove.
We have small pockets. Jack 10 suited.
Well, which small pockets?
Deuces to fives.
Jack 10.
Yes, and then maybe some ace 8 offs, ace 9 offs.
Is that it?
Maybe some suited aces, ace deuce, ace 3, ace 4. Suited. Yeah.
This looks like 20 big blinds button shoving range to me.
Yeah.
Except these. So I would avoid playing all-ins in this spot because it's just still too deep. So if you think about 20 big blinds, there's no jamming. If you think about button, there's jamming, and pretty much exactly what you just described there, a little bit higher up here, right? But this is why I said like this reminds me of 20 big blinds button open jamming range, but it's not cutoff 20 big blinds open jamming range, right? Like there's no jamming. Yes. So now what like we need to think about what could cause you to like think about that there'll be jamming. Well, it's the presence of the short stack. So like let's say we had 20 big blinds here, but everyone else behind us would have 15 big blinds. Then I can see a hand like this being definitely interesting jamming 10, right? On the cutoff. We like 14 effective with everyone behind, this hand is jamming.
Mm.
So you kind of like took this idea and wanted to use it here, maybe because there is a shorty. But the problem with that is we still play 19 effective with both players on our direct left. So now if you look at the uneven distributions, and we put ourselves on like 19 big blinds with some
Are there
players
uneven
behind.
stack sizes now in GTO Wizard?
Yes. So they do. So like here, let's say we have 18 and there's like 11, 16, 13. Then and I can see some interest in building a jamming component on the cutoff. And then this hand makes the cut. But you are covering everyone behind.
Yeah.
So the big blind there had what was it? 13, right? So you do cover 3 players behind you, but that's not the case here. You only cover 1, and you still play 19 effective with both blinds. So we need to look at like different distribution of stacks here, which would be more like something like this, that you cover 1, but you are covered by, or like similar, they have similar stack size, right? 21, 21, 23, 21, and then you see the jamming is like pretty much gone. Yes, there's more than if everyone had 20, but I would like still not to do that because again the EV is pretty similar and those hands are mixing. So like the EV of ace-9 as a jam always is exactly the same, hence the solver is mixing it. EV of jack-10 suited as a jam is slightly better as the raise. However, the thing with that is you can make more, like the EV of open raising non-nulling is gonna be higher when players behind make pre-flop and like mistakes on flops as well, right? So I wouldn't necessarily do that.
Okay.
But okay, let's open. Ace-9 jack, you decided, but let's actually go normal. Then on a turn, you said that let's just close that. Yeah, so first is gone, right? Like we don't necessarily want to do that. Second is flop, we see bet range on. I guess big sizing also makes sense. It does, but like, does it make sense for your hand?
What was the question?
Yeah, how would
Okay.
you build a big betting range on ace jack 9? What hands do you want to bet big with?
Okay, so my top pairs, I bet big. And as offset, like maybe some queen 6 suited type of hands. And my second and third pairs or under pairs, I bet small. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be like that. Like it's gonna be like a queen X suited, king X suited, possibly that offset the ace king, ace queen, ace 10, ace 8 to some degree. But your hand doesn't like it, right? Like what your hand wants to do is like your hand wants to get called by a weaken 9. Then on a turn you identify that this is very good card for you. It is a range c-bet situation for us. And you are right in terms of saying that, like, yes, this is gonna be 2e. We don't necessarily want to be splitting too much there. And on the river, so the question was, would do we barrel the turn? Like, do we barrel the turn with entire range? Yes, we do. And 2e size is also correct, but you see that like on the river you decided to, I think, check. Let me see. Or maybe you barreled off. But
Yes,
yeah,
I
you
barreled
did.
off, but I wasn't sure. Well, so
Cool.
yeah, my main question was like if I barrel range on the turn, I also have to barrel like jack 10s, jack 8s, jack 7s. Like
Mhm.
it feels kind of weird to bet them Geo, but I guess that's a strategy.
I mean, you could bet like slightly smaller than Geo. Like this is something that you're gonna see when you end up with range, like turn range c bet spot. If that's the case, then like you could see some smaller. But like again, I'm not a fan of like complicating things there too much. Yeah, good idea to like identify those suited hands that want to bomb flop as well. But we went small as the 9 likes it. King, check, check. And yeah, pretty much range bet. It's SPR2, so on SPR2, Geo is 60% pot size. So that's why you see like a split between 75 and 50. If 60%, 62, I think is the exact number. If that was allowed, that is going to be the size. But it is small betting, so you're right. But again, I don't think it's going to be like a lot of hands that mix both anyway. So it's not that big of a deal if you play one size here. But you could bet smaller. It's possible.
Okay, so but I could simplify and bet big, or so if the solver mixes between half pot and quarter pot, like is it yeah minus EV to bet whole range like half pot or
I don't think
Geo?
so.
Okay.
There is like specific hands like yours that prefer small. But it's just let me see.
Which hands do you want to bet small?
So if we like isolate like a B25, then you see like hands like pretty much yours, like the 10-9, Cinder, Jack 8, Jack 7. But it's balanced, right? Like straight goes small too. Queens. But it's now, I mean, the question was about like the spot was more on the river. So
Yes.
if we, let's say bet half and he calls. First, on every time on the river, you want to be looking at the hand in a way, okay, what's my value bet threshold? So what is the weakest value bet that you have here?
I guess all my toppers are flying in, and maybe some King X2, like King Queens, King Tens, but yeah, mainly my toppers is threshold here.
Right. And in terms of the bluffs, what you want to be thinking about is, can I check back and win? So, because then the EV of check is non-zero. And
Yeah.
very often solver is then taking this to showdown, even though the showdown is very, very limited. Like you win once per year, but you do. It's not
Okay.
like not never. So can you win with this hand if you check?
I don't really think so, because like he has some Queen nines, also 10-9s. But all weaker 9x are folding turn, I guess, against Geo size. So there's no flush draw, like he has to fold like 9-7 of hearts, I guess. Yeah, so we are never good.
The solver is quite sticky with a hand like 10-8 on a turn.
Okay.
In equilibrium. So your hand is when you look at it, it does have a check EV of almost one big blind.
Oh wow, okay.
It doesn't bluff.
Yeah.
But you need to think about how much equity, like again, right? Like if like what are the hands that I can beat? And if you look at here, it's very limited amount of hands. You block them too, but there is some. There's a couple 10-8s and some like 10-7s that like somehow arrive here. But if your opponent doesn't have those hands, which I would say I wouldn't, right? So then the EV of checking is 0 basically, because this is the only hands that you can beat. Like there's no other hand that you chop with 10-9. Which then makes me want to bluff. So like I think exploitatively you could do that as you did. I think that's fair.
Does he have weaker 9x? Big blind?
Yeah, the 10-9 sometimes, but weaker ones, not really. Well, 10s, no, it doesn't have them.
Okay. So only with
Yes,
elevated
Queen 9,
equity.
10-9, so he doesn't have weaker. He just has the ones that we chop with.
Yeah.
So evaluating, okay, can I win a showdown? If the answer is no, if this player doesn't have this 10-8 that you can check down and win against, then the EV of this hand as a check is 0. So then you need to evaluate, okay, is bluffing like attractive, right? Like, what do I have in terms of like blocker? So you are blocking the nuts basically, and then you block 2 per hands, and those are the hands that he never folds with, which makes this hand like a reasonably fine bluff.
Okay.
But in equilibrium, when he does have these 10-8s, then 10-9 has a check EV of 1 big blind, so that's why it's not used. But yeah, Queen 9 is used sometimes, even though it's checking its plus EV, so it's quite tough sometimes. So yeah, like thinking, like asking those questions on the river is something that can help. Let's move on. Yeah, I mentioned all of it. And 2. So let me pull it up. The open raise spots against the small blind are definitely quite tough because how this range is constructed. King 3 does we bet small, he calls 7. We go Geo, I think. We go pot, he calls 7 river, and when check. So what I want to discuss is pre-flop and flop is standard, although I'm not entirely sure about c-bet strategies against small blind. Definitely very limited boards that you range bet on, if any. You need to be thinking about the offsuit hands that he has, because they're gonna be very specific. So what are the offsuit combos that small blind calls here against the button?
A lot of queen jack offs, queen 10 offs, king 10 offs, king jack offs. That type of hands. So yeah, like queen 10 boards are pretty bad, jack 10 boards are pretty bad, I guess. And he don't call like low offsuit cards, so yeah.
So what's the weakest? What's the bottom of his offsuit range? That
Like
calls
the 10x,
sometimes.
10x.
So what hands?
Jack 10, queen 10, king 10. And then he mainly 3-bets his like ace-7s to ace-10s and don't call it.
Yeah. And what about the suited combos? What are the ones that will be present in his range a lot? Suited what?
Their small blind plays quite linear, like he flats hands like king 4 suited until king 7 suited, like queen 6 to queen 9 suited, and jack 7 to jack 9 suited. Stuff like that.
And what is he reshoving?
For 40, some suited broadways, pockets, off-suited ace-x, and yeah, maybe some suited aces.
Right. Yeah. But the answer I was looking for, it would be, I mean, pretty much what you said, but like the block of suited 8s and 9s is gonna be in his range a lot. This block.
Yeah.
And then you nail the bottom, you nail the 3-bet jamming component, like non-length component too, so like it's fine. You nail this as well. Pockets, jamming. So now if you think about this composition and you look at king 3 deuce, where he's gonna end up having king 10 a lot, king jack sometimes, but king jack suited, but then a 3 and a deuce, like he has deuces pure.
Okay.
Hmm?
But
But
king
this
3
board-
deuce is quite good, right? Like,
It's disconnected, which helps. So what is the board that you think is going to be pretty bad? The one that in position needs to check often against the small blind flat.
some a board like 5, 6, 7. So he has suited 8s that connects quite well. He has all the sets. Yeah, or like 9 high boards, 10 high boards, pretty bad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's more actually
Almost all.
about Broadway boards. So it's more like Broadway boards rather than like very low ones. Like 5, 6, 7, you do have overpair advantage still, and you do have more sets. He does jam quite a bit of them. You know, and you have them
Okay.
pure. So it's not that bad of a texture. So 40% check. I think the average check is around 40%, 50% on all boards. So now the bad boards are gonna be when the Broadway combos connect, especially when the suited 9 connect 2 or suited 8 connect 2. So like say queen 9, I don't know, 3. – 60% check. King 10x, perhaps. It's not gonna be great. 56% check.
Why isn't solver leading at that high amount that in position isn't checking more than 50%?
I mean, solver will be leading here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I
So
remember a rule like that out of position is leading at that amount, that in position is not checking back more than 50%. Like, do you know this rule?
No.
Okay.
But there's a lot of Broadway textures, and as you said, 10 high textures that small blind is actually mostly leading on. So those are the boards that we don't want to be c-betting on often. Small blind in practice doesn't play leads as much as they need to be. Correctly so, because the in position players over c-betting those textures for the most part. You know?
Yeah.
So the like ace queen 10 even is the board that small blind leads on, given how much equity he has. So he's favorite here.
Okay.
Right? That leads to the leading being part of a strategy. That leads to us being very careful on ace queen 10. And if you think about these textures, people might bet a little bit too much here. This button. But king 3 deuce is not necessarily as bad. It's disconnected from the Broadway component of his range enough, right? Like you do have threes and deuces. Yes, he has deuces too, but then threes he's jamming sometimes. So yeah, that's like decent, like okay-ish board for yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, turn is quite standard to still get a lot of value from flush draws and a king. And the river is just like a snap check back. So I didn't even like note anything there. So on the turn break, I would think that we split our range into okay, this I want to address for sure. So on the turn break, so identify what is the like that it's a break, right? I would think that we split our range in checking small block bet and 2e sizing. So now let's think about it again. After what I saw in the introduction, right?
Yeah, we played Giro or check.
Yeah, what are the exactly right? And what are the hands that make sense to block? Well, this again, very specific ones. Queens and jacks and tens, perhaps maybe like sixes, right? You would like block bet with only. So that doesn't that doesn't work.
But I would also block bet my sets and 2 pairs. Like I'm protected there.
I mean,
it's not
but
like
you lose a lot of EV.
Okay.
Right? If you like start betting small in position with the nuts.
In the seminar video, you said that hands that already have the equity locked, like yeah, mainly wants to bet small, but maybe only in situations where we split our range. So
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's a situation where we only play geo or check.
Yeah, also like the
Okay.
seminar was small blind versus big blind in PvP spots, right? So it's out of position. I think this is what you refer to.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So again, we're like out of position player with the nuts is playing differently than in
Yes.
position
Okay.
player with the nuts.
Okay. So if you have pocket, okay, if you have pocket deuces, you are bombing the turn. If you have pocket sevens, you are bombing the turn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, there's no splits, so we can like move on.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously river is a good check back. Like you don't want to bluff this. This is too thin to value bet against the small blind or any position really. He doesn't have leads. The 7 doesn't improve him. He still doesn't have any bolts, right? Like the deuces and threes against a small c-bet are very likely check raising, at least sometimes or mainly. He doesn't have kings. He has less threes and deuces. You have more of that. Then sevens are not in his range. The only trips that he makes there is gonna be like 7-6 of diamonds, ace-7 of diamonds. Jack 7 diamonds. So very limited amount of trips that he gets there with, which doesn't allow him to play a lead strategy on this river.
Okay.
There's a question in the chat. So our c-bet, I wasn't following, sorry, but I see one. So our c-betting frequency should go down even more when small blind is checking range, right? Yes, definitely. You might end up in spots that button is range checking if small blind doesn't play leads on boards that small blind has a lot of equity on. Hand 3, which is this one. Right. So this is the hand that I already said. A mistake on a turn could lead to some fuck ups later. So like you're gonna end up having different river arriving range. 994. Small thing, but I would say it still matters a little. I wouldn't go 25-33, like that's 25, I guess. I would just min bet those boards. I think they are. The sizing is very efficient. But it's not like a mistake or anything. Turn. Thoughts here? I know you have notes. Maybe let's go for notes. First. So on the turn it gets interesting. I think that we barrel this turn quite frequently because big blind is mainly raising a 9. That's true. And doesn't have much 5x. Also true. So like the average c-bet turn is gonna be like 55 in most spots. So here, would you say it's gonna be higher than that?
I would say yes, it's higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe we have all the barrels on the overcards. So like we play quite aggressive on a jack, on a queen. Yeah, but yeah, I think so. It's quite a lot.
Right. It could be like 60% c-bet turn situation. I don't see problems with that frequency. But what's tough is that to know what hands to bluff with. Because he's capped. He's gonna be check raising most of his 9x at 40 big blinds, if not all of them. Which means that you can just barrel into the oblivion oftentimes, right? Against the capped range. But if you use a hand like this from this position, like the button, when you have a very wide selection of possible bluff hands, then this hand doesn't have good enough properties for bluffing because of two things. for starters, you block hands that you want him to have. So you are blocking some like offsuited hands, offsuited jack X, you block like jack 8 off, you block like king 3 off, like a king of clubs, you block folds when you hold those suits like this. And it also like you do have showdown against his floats. So this is gonna be a hand that is too good to bluff with. Also to control your frequencies, you want to like select hands that don't block his folds. And those hands definitely don't contain a king of clubs or a jack of spades.
Okay.
It comes down to like how he defends the flop. So if we go here, so that was, what was it? Button, big blind 40. Check. I'm gonna use B20 because 33 doesn't work. So very important that you understand how he defends here on the flop, right? He's gonna be folding, overfolding MDF, and then he's gonna be floating or raising with the backdoor equity hands. Like king 3 with the king of clubs is raising mostly, but sometimes calls. King 5 with the 5 of clubs, and like a king of clubs is raising. And then he's gonna have a lot of floats wrap around the 9, like jack 10 offsuit, queen 10 offsuit, king 10 offsuit, with and without the club even. And then the king 8 offsuit, he will whip it with a king of clubs. Jack 8 offsuit, he's gonna end up having 2, like the 10-8 like wrappers. So like you do, as you see, like he's gonna be calling those hands on the flop sometimes. So now when it when he does call, and when you say bet 80% pot, now what you need to be thinking about, what are the hands that he's gonna now fold against the turn C bet? And you see this entire Broadway component here that folds. Because of this hand doesn't make a good bluff. For starters, this hand does dominate a big chunk of that stuff. And secondly, your hand blocks all of that fold, all of this block of hands that fold. So it doesn't have good properties, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty tempting to look at your suits and, oh, let's barrel, because then I can jam a club or a spade without thinking deeper about it and thinking about, oh, I actually do dominate quite a bit of floats. On top of that, I do block folding range, which is usually a big signal not to bluff. Right?
Okay, so it's also more about the offsuit combinations, because if I have the jack and spades and king and clubs, I block a lot of turn floats, like king 8 of clubs or jack 6 of spades also.
So why don't we use a hand like king 6, king 7 offsuit with the king of clubs or spades for bluffing? When we then unblock the jack 8s and queen 10s and queen jacks and stuff like that. And we can, when we barrel king 6, we can make king 10 offsuit fold.
Yeah.
When we barrel king jack, we also make king 10 fold, but this is not necessarily what we want to accomplish, right?
Yeah, I got it.
So it's about just like being selective and looking at the property of the hand. When it bets, like what do you really do? Like what do you accomplish, right? Like if you barrel queen 7 offsuit queen of spades, well, the queen 10 you fold out, that's great, right? But if you barrel queen jack, folding queen 10 is not necessarily what you want to do.
Yeah.
So bluffing more polar here is going to be a good answer, and being more selective and thinking very deeply about what do I block folding range? Like, do I dominate his folding range? Like there's a lot of EV that in this hand, for when it goes check check, you river a king, you river a jack, you're gonna win chips against his weaker kings and weaker jacks, right? Yeah. But you don't fold out any better from the same hand class. So now knowing this, and knowing that we are probably interested in bluffing hands like queen 8 off with the queen of spades because it has better properties.
Yeah.
What are the other bluffs we could have here? Because we have shit ton of value, right? He's capped. We have all the nines. We can bet pocket sixes for value against the 4, no problem. A lot of value bets we have. But like, what is the betting frequency on the turn? Yeah, 60%. So you pretty much nailed it. Good job. But what is bluffs then?
All my low cards, like 6-8, suited, 7-8, I would bluff. Hands like 10-8, 10-7, I would bluff.
10-8, 10-7.
And then all.
Interesting.
10-8,
10-7 are very interesting hands.
Okay.
More, keep going. More than play.
I think it's important to have also 2 overs to the 4 and the 5. So 10-7 and 10-8, I think are good bluffs, and then maybe my queen 6, queen 7 type of hands, and also the hand you mentioned, like queen 8 offs, king 8 offs are much better candidates to bluff.
Okay, got it. What do you do with queen 3 of hearts?
Also bombing turn.
Queen 6 of hearts.
Bombing turn.
Jack 6 of diamonds.
Also betting, like I'm pulling out so much better, but yeah,
You know
maybe
what's
I'm
my
too
point here?
much. Yeah. I have
You
so
over
many
bluff
bluffs.
massively on this turn if you barrel all of the hands that you
Yes.
mentioned. So that's why I said I think 10-7 offsuit and 10-8 offsuit are very interesting combos to look into because those hands are blocking folding range.
Okay.
And very frequently, hands that do that will be moved into the late bluffing component.
Okay.
So let's see. 10-8 is doing a lot of betting. But those hands aren't. Let's go here. King highs as well. So king 10 is very bad bluff to have. 10-8, you're right. It's fine to use that. And then hands that are, hearts and diamonds like Jack 3, King 3 type hands. They do barrel only with flush draws on this board. But Jack 6 is in the mixer always pretty much. Doesn't matter what the suits are. Queen 6, betting, hot time, 10-6, betting. So those hands are used more often, like more than I thought. It could be a product of like a double flush draw.
Maybe having an overcard
Possibly.
to the 4 and the 5.
Yes, that's for sure. But the king highs aren't necessarily used as much, but then the 8x's off are just the bottom of your range here. And they are being used more, which is quite surprising because if you think about it, then like again, those 10-8 off blocks Jack 10 fold, Queen 10 fold, King 10 fold, Queen 8 fold, Jack 8 fold, 10-8 fold. It doesn't look like a great bluffing combo, but it's used. But it's not used always. I guess we just have to like hit the 60% c-bet somehow, so we don't mind betting them. I'm not sure if you would value bet ace high here. I think it's pretty good to do that on double flush draw, exactly, especially on double flush draw. But let's say you don't value bet those hands, then clearly you have to be like over bluffing here a little.
Yeah.
Right. If you use like all of that stuff always, then and not bet your ace high stands, then could be the problem. So thinking about not interfering with folds, dominating, thinking about like the fact that like King Jack dominates a lot of hands that he has, right? So don't necessarily bluffing the top of the range in a way from like a nomad hands is the way to go. So I wouldn't bet this.
Okay.
I would actually check too often with hands like 10-8 off and stuff. Maybe I could like prove you something that let's say on the texture that we have. But maybe it's gonna be easier to like showcase the idea. So on the 5, yeah, that's kind of easier. So you see like queen 10, 10 8, queen, like those hands are being checked, you know, quite often, and then the high-low hands being used always.
Interesting.
So, and this is because a deuce and a 3 and a 6 don't block folding range, but a 10 and 8, a queen, does block folding range. So when you bet the turn, it's a lot of stuff like this that folds, but there's no deuce in it or 3 in it. So that makes the high and low combos with the very low kickers very decent bluffs, not really interfering with stuff that folds. Less of a thing on a pair board, but this doesn't mean that this hand is good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, this doesn't mean that this hand is a good bluff. The river would check back, which is fine. So let's see what's on here. In position has all offsuited 9x and all the overpairs. King Jack with this suit I thought in game is a nice candidate to bluff with. I hope it's clearer now.
Yeah.
Because like everything sort of looks like it's a decent candidate, right? Except the fact that it does block folds and dominates a lot of floats. Usually hands like king, queen, ace 10 want to check because they don't get anything better to fold. Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Not sure about the turn barrel of king jack there. So yeah, that's. I also mentioned it at the beginning, right? You very often you know the answer, but then you start like questioning yourself. The sizing is a bit difficult on paired boards. Usually a bit smaller. Trips doesn't need protection. I want to keep the range wide. Yes, but again, 2E is gonna be decent idea there. It's gonna be 2E. Like you wanna push the net advantage.
Okay.
You wanna like drive the money in the middle. So that was 9-9 4 turn 5. Small call. See. There's no like blocking.
Yeah.
Just 2E sizing for the most part. Where's the on the river? I think the check back is fine. He'll fold his 4x anyway. Yes, I would agree. All right, we still have. I think this is. Yeah, we did 3 hands, so this is hand 4. So that means that we still have 2 more. I don't mind doing this.
We can do
another
this.
time.
Yes, in the next session.
So yeah, because there's quite a bit to talk about.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah. Yeah. So let's do that the other day. So
yeah,
we're gonna be left with some hands to review later. I'm gonna be in Prague, so I'm not sure. My flight is on Wednesday next week. By of the Black Friday / Cyber Monday extended promo that we are having right now for seminars that I do. 30% off for new subs for first month. So it's discounted from $125 per month to $87.50, and then all the videos and all the bundles are also 30% off. That's the last day today for that promotion. This is like just a slide of random week that how we do things. So I'm doing sessions on Monday about GPV, so similar pretty much exactly what we just talked about with Timmy. Wednesday is doing multi-way sessions, so 3A situations. Always doing ISM sessions on Wednesdays. Then MP is covering PKO. And we wrap the week up usually with the quiz, just to test you guys what you've learned this week. I'm gonna be doing a free session tomorrow as well, so you can join my Discord and take part. It's open for everyone. It's gonna be only half an hour long, but after this, we will make the Kahoot open for everyone that is on this session as well. So the Kahoot is a quiz that you can participate in, and it's gonna be on Twitch tomorrow with TechFlow as well. 3:30. Yeah, that's all I have. You
All
can do the
right.
giveaway.
All
So
right.
basically what we are doing.